I should say that death was probably the most surprising and one of the most fascinating experiences I have lived during these 10 years of past life regression therapy, both as a patient, as a client, and as a therapist. Why? Because when we are approaching death, usually we are thinking of it as something extremely painful and extremely dramatic. But what I have noticed during my practice and during my experience as a patient was that all the time death was a mere expiration, a powerful and long exhalation, I would say. I mean, I lived death as a release. As a release, a simple release from the physical body of which I was attached and in which I lived that particular past life I had just passed through. I mean, all the time when I approach death, what my husband, who was my therapist, saw and perceived while I was in trance was something like this. I mean, I was stunned by this simplicity and by the fact that death is, as a matter of fact, such a natural process. Death is the first step of releasing the soul from the physical body and the first step of returning to, I should say, to the natural state of existence of a soul. Because as a matter of fact, we are spiritual beings which are only for a limited period of time placed in a physical body. And this moment of expiration is the first step that we are doing in order to detach from the physical body, and we start slowly to come back in the days that follow the physical death to the natural state of a non-material being who starts its uplifting towards the world I sometimes call home or heavens or to the world beyond. Now, of course that it depends a lot if we speak of a natural death or of a death which happens in a violent way. Because, for example, during the medieval ages, unfortunately people died in extremely various and violent ways, from burning at the stake, an experience which I also lived, for example, to hanging, or if we speak about modern times, car accidents, which are also a violent way of dying. If this happens, of course that in this case the therapist might face a catharsis of a client. A catharsis being a moment of very deep emotional release. What might happen is that the client might shout, he or she might scream, might tremble, might fulfill some strong movements of body, and the therapist is particularly trained in the schools which we are studying in regression therapy to help the client release all these physical tensions, all these fears, all these emotions, and to heal completely this trauma of a violent death. If we come back to my book, to Being Piotr Ilyich, unfortunately what I describe in the book is a violent death because we speak about a suicide. In this case, death was a really traumatic experience to pass through, but not because of the death itself, because the death itself was also a long expiration, but because when a person decides to suicide, he or she is most probably in a deep and strong state of a chronic depression. A depression is a state of mind out of which you do not see, you cannot perceive any way out. You simply do not see any light beyond the long tunnel, which is a strong depression. So when you decide to do this, as I decided as Piotr Illich, is because I couldn't solve the life context I was in, and which was characterized especially by the desperate love story I was living. So when I took this decision, I took it in the deep desire to finish with everything, to forget everything, and to not exist anymore. But unfortunately, the greatest surprise that I had is that right away, my final expiration, I left my physical body and I started, I think, in a matter of minutes or even seconds of terrestrial lifetime to feel again. And as I'm describing in the book, in the prologue, I could not understand why am I seeing, why am I perceiving things, why do I keep recording life exactly as before? And of course, that what was extremely traumatic for myself is that exactly the people I loved the most entered the room and found me, and of course that I saw and I perceived their desperation, their weeping, their shouting, and everything was extremely traumatic for me. Of course that during the regression therapy, I understood why I had to leave this experience, why the divine made me remain attached to the physical plan, and he made me understand and acknowledge the sufferance I caused behind me, and he made me create a very strong bond to my higher self and to my, let's say, to my essence as a being. Because maybe for the first time the divine forced me to remain near my being, to acknowledge what I did, and he forced me to start a very deep and strong process of reconciliation with myself. And this is something I deeply understood. In many sessions of regression therapy, I had to pass through in order to completely heal this violent death. So, all in all, death is a release, is a long expiration, and is a much more simple and natural process than we might think. But of course that it depends a lot on the context in which we are dying. Now, speaking of how I perceive death in my current life after these 10 years of working with regression therapy, either as a patient or as a therapist, unfortunately, during the last 2 to 4 years, I passed through a lot of deaths, through a lot of separations from dear ones, either from my family or from my friends. And what is completely different is the fact that I never ever do conceive death as a complete extinction of the person who lives. Because I'm more than sure that he or she keeps on existing. So I never approach death as an end. I simply think that the person as I mentioned, changes, let's say, its state of aggregation, that he or she is no more physical, but he or she released its physical shape and starts its ascension towards the world beyond, towards what we might call heaven or home. Unfortunately, what is extremely painful and extremely hard to live through is the sufferance of the persons who are still here on earth. I mean, it is us who suffer, the people who are left here behind on earth. But as it is written in a lot of books who were published during the last years by people who approached near-death experiences, when you go out of the physical body and you approach the astral plane, most often there are a lot of angels or spiritual guides or even a divine presence. So each person perceives it in his or her different way, but there are people who wait for us and who help us in this process of leaving the physical world and going back home. So they are coming and they are infusing us with feelings of love, of tenderness, which the person feels very strongly. So for the person who leaves, it's much more easier to go towards light and towards love. While for us here on earth, of course, that this separation is much more painful, and this feeling of longing appears, and we miss that particular person. We miss the physical touch. We might want to speak or to ask for a piece of advice or to embrace the person that we love and who left us. But it's mainly our sufferance. So I repeat, it's not that the other one does not love us anymore, or that the other one forgot us. On the contrary, he keeps on loving us, but in the meantime, he feels this call, this strong bond which takes us back towards light and towards home and towards the divine presence that characterizes the world beyond.